Hello, my name is Grant Peters, and welcome to A Closer Look. A Closer Look is a podcast I'm making where we are diving into and taking a closer look at the lives of people in HLG. Today's podcast stars Dr. Turner and me, where we talk about his life to HLG, during HLG, and after HLG. Thank you. All right. So we're just going to start off the day with, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. Excited to be here. Excited to start this podcast. And it's exciting for me as a senior just to be able to create some content.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you excited about graduating?
Oh, I can't wait to get in the real world.
Yeah.
I want to stay a kid as long as possible.
Right.
But it is fun because just a lot of options and a lot of things to go after. So
Great.
It's going to be interesting. So I just want to start off with learning more about you. So where'd you go to college?
So my story is a little bit unique. I started out in college at Southeast Missouri State University, which is in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Didn't have the greatest experience there, so I took some time off, came back home to Hannibal's my hometown. I don't know if you knew that or not. But came back here just to kind of regroup and think more of, what do I want to do with my life? You know, and originally I'd set out in some sort of biology major or science major, and that just didn't go well. I mean, honestly, I got into like chemistry class and it ate my lunch. So that kind of caused me to, reconsider my career goals. So I came back home for a little while for about 8 months, ended up at University of Missouri-Columbia. Where I did a majority. I set a business major because I thought, there's lots of stuff you can do with that.
Yeah, very, very versatile.
Yeah, versatile. I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point, but I thought that made the most sense. So,
Sure.
And I was working. So a little backstory: I was working during college in Columbia at Cracker Barrel. So I was. And at the time, they had been kind of hinting around like they have this management training program, pilot program that they're thinking about doing, and but they had never done anything like that before. They'd always said we don't hire from within to be managers. We always hire from without. We never raise anybody in and through the ranks. And so when that finally did sort of kind of kick into gear. And it became kind of a reality, then that made sense with my business degree. And so then I went the track into management with Cracker Barrel, and once again hit pause again on my education. I was about 85, 90 hours degree into my undergraduate degree, 85, 90 hours. And then I ended up finishing at, when I got transferred to a Cracker Barrel in Kansas City, I ended up finishing kind of a non-traditional evening division degree completion program at William Jewell College. So I tell people I'm kind of like this hybrid, I did a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit everywhere. But so my degree is from William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri, in business. But a majority, I would say, of my undergrad I spent at Mizzou.
Yeah, so, I mean, it seems like you went through a whole lot of walks of life and experienced a lot of different things. Really went all over Missouri.
I did. I was in, from Southeast Missouri to Hannibal to Columbia to helped open a Cracker Barrel in Fort Leonard Wood to Kansas City. So just kind of every corner of the state, really except for the southwest corner.
Yeah.
I spent in Missouri.
I'll tell you what, I do love Cracker Barrel.
I do too.
It's so good.
I talked to somebody today who had never eaten at a Cracker Barrel before.
Oh, what a disgrace.
And I thought, what? So I gave her an assignment. I said, hey, over break, you have an assignment to, as you're traveling home for break, to eat at a Cracker Barrel and report back what your experience was like.
Nothing is better than country fried chicken there. It's so good.
That's what I told her, yeah. I said, you can't go wrong with like country fried steak, country fried chicken and dumplings, something like that, or breakfast.
So you had a business degree. How'd you get into the whole ministry, theology aspect of life? I mean, you are a very knowledgeable man when it comes to that area. Right. So I'm assuming you had to have a lot of education coming behind that. So where'd you start there?
Sure. So after that, the only way I can describe I had a call to ministry was the Lord really stirred up in me what I call kind of a holy discomfort, right?
Interesting.
And I I wasn't unhappy necessarily with what I was doing, but I began to sort of introspectively look and say, what are the guys that are ahead of me in my field doing? And a lot of them were either really miserable or, they were divorced, or the job had sort of consumed them. And it kind of began kind of simply at that point of me just questioning, do I want to be that type of person?
For sure.
And so my wife and I really began praying about it and seeking the Lord about it. And that was when really felt a call to be a pastor. And didn't again have any background to that. None of my family members. My dad's not a pastor. My dad worked here locally at a chemical plant north of Hannibal for 37 years. So I got a couple uncles that are lay preachers, but really, it wasn't like I was reverting back to the family business.
You just grew up in the faith. So
I grew up in the faith.
Yeah.
I knew what it meant to be a pastor. And so then the logical thing for me to do with call to ministry was pursue some sort of theological training. So again, God, I believe in His sovereignty, put me in Kansas City for that.
Yeah.
The Sunday after my call to ministry, when I went forward, really felt like an obedience, not really knowing what that meant. The Sunday after that, I had a guy sitting behind me in the service who was writing in Hebrew in his Bible. And I thought, that's really odd, Like, you don't see that.
No, not at all.
And so after the service, I just introduced myself, and it happened to be, his name was Dr. Stephen Andrews, who was an Old Testament professor at Midwestern Seminary. And I explained to him, my call to ministry, and he said, well, you really should think about theological training, and why don't you come visit Midwestern Seminary? And so I did, and ended up there doing a Master of Divinity degree, pastoring at the same time a small country church of about 120 people in a town of 900 people just north of Kansas City. And it was the same guy, interestingly enough, it was the same guy, Dr. Andrews, who led me into a PhD program. So I was the type of guy that I like school. I liked the learning process. I didn't so much like the writing of the papers. And,
yes, I agree.
I mean, and or the tests and those sorts of things. And so I love the learning aspect of it.
I completely agree.
So I hadn't really thought about a PhD. In fact, I was one of those guys that said, hey, when I get my master's degree, I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to leave education behind. It's time to work, and to
make some money.
Make some money and be out there and making a difference. And so he approached me. I'd written a paper for one of his classes, and he said, hey, have you ever thought about a PhD program? And I'm like, no. No. If it means writing a dissertation, no. And he goes, well, you really ought to pray about that. I'm like, great.
That's when you know.
Great. So, it's one of those things. I think the Lord used him in my life in two different places, either before my professional theological training, in master's work, and then prior to PhD work, God really put him in my path to encourage me towards that. So I entered a PhD program, and 6 grueling years later, graduated with that. So
now you're Dr. Turner.
And now I'm Dr. Turner, and so now I get to write papers for fun, and not because I have to.
I tell you what, I love to learn, but the writing and the tests, that's where it gets me.
Yeah.
So I'm a crazy guy, and I'll listen to audiobooks that are like about history or something like that, just because I am interested by it.
Right. I'm the same way. I've got podcasts I listen to kind of deepen my faith, but also to challenge me in areas that I don't normally read in or think about. And so one of my favorite things to do every year actually is to go to a conference with, I go with Scott Hall, Mr. Hall, our business professor, and it's called the Hillsdale Free Market Forum. And it's nowhere anywhere like you could kind of draw a dotted line between Hillsdale and what I do, but it's so it's about free market economics, and it's just one of these conferences that's really outside my comfort zone with as far as the material, but it broadens my perspective, and I just like to go as a learner, and I just listen and I soak up things, and so it wouldn't be the typical conference I put my finger on as a New Testament PhD guy and go, yeah, I got to go there every year.
But when you learn that, you learn how to speak to those people as well, though. You can educate yourself the same as they are.
Yeah, and Hillsdale really has a connection with Acton University, and And so they're in the realm of human flourishing, which is something I'm passionate about, image of God realities, those sorts of things. And so it's a natural fit. We're like-minded. And then it speaks a little bit to my business background as well with the economics aspect of it and free markets and those sorts of things.
One of my favorite things to do when looking at, like you said, diving deeper into the faith is I love to look at the history of the Bible. So like
Right.
how like evidence that this was actually there, and then that also like how they lived, like the idea of how Jesus lived, or the idea of how they ate dinner, like just sat differently at tables.
Absolutely.
And that's so interesting to me how differently and vastly different our culture has evolved. And I don't know if
Right.
evolved is a good word, but
No, it's a good
changed,
word. Right. Yeah.
changed into what it is today. We're sitting at a table instead of laying down beside it.
Yeah, exactly. And just to think about culturally, and that's one of the things I love about like even traveling to Israel with a group of our students is, they get to kind of see and have their perceptions of what the Bible says sort of shaken a little bit. They get to meet people, they get to see the geography of the land, they get to stand in a first century synagogue and think and imagine what that might have been like for Jesus and his followers. And it's eye-opening, and it's true that many of those students come back and they say, I'll never read the Bible in the same way again.
It puts a different perspective on it, a whole different spin. That's
I love to see that.
my buddy Luke went on. Of course, Luke. He loved it, and he always talks about how it shifted everything, the way he looked at it. And then when he sees pictures of Israel, he's like, "Oh, I was there. I've been there.
Yeah, I've been there. I've seen that." So yeah,
For
it's
sure.
it's definitely enlightening, and I'm with you. I love backgrounds. I love history of the Bible, and they're always discovering something new in the Holy Land or in and around that Mediterranean world that informs our understanding of just what life was like.
Oh, for sure.
In that day and time. And it's so, in some ways it's similar. I mean, the human experience doesn't change a lot. But in many ways, there's so many things that are foreign, that would be so foreign to us, and likewise, if they saw our culture, they go, wow, that's really strange. You guys eat at Chick-fil-A. What's that?
For sure.
I think they would love it,
Oh, yeah.
but,
they don't have fast food like we do.
No, not at all.
So much different.
So different.
The way they shop and do everything differently.
Yeah.
So kind of switching tracks, one thing has always fascinated me about you is that you are adopted.
Yes.
Personally, my family has adopted my two younger sisters are adopted. We adopted through foster care, and I've always had a heart for adoption. And I always thought that it was so interesting that you got adopted, found a family that loved you and raised you up, but also you had a passion to find your siblings too.
Right.
And I just want to, if you could explain to me that story a little bit, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, it's again, it's one of those God things. I didn't have sort of this bad experience growing up as a child.
For sure.
My parents are incredible. I mean, they incredibly loving. My dad is probably the most gracious guy you'd ever meet. I used to hate going to the store with him as a kid because he would talk
Sit
to
there
everybody,
for hours.
and I'd be like, "Hey, it's time to go. Come on!" And he loves people, and he just loves people well. And so I had this, and not just my parents, but even my extended family as well. They were incredible. So I never really. It wasn't like when I sought it out. It wasn't this like I was missing something or lacking something. It was more out of a sort of a curiosity.
Yeah.
What's my story? Where did I originate, right? It's like, I know that I have a birth mother out there and maybe siblings. I didn't know that at the time. And so, probably 35 years I looked, and the laws were really restrictive in Missouri as to what you could know and what you couldn't know. And a couple years ago, the laws changed to where adoptive children can petition to have their unredacted birth certificates sent to them. And a lot of that was centered around legislation on genetic testing and things like that. Like, I go to the doctor and they always ask you the question, if you got a pain in your arm, they're like, well, hey, you got a family history of heart disease.
Yeah,
and you're like, well,
you really don't know.
I don't know, and that could be a good thing, right? Or it could be a bad thing, and all the men in my life could have, biological men could have dropped dead at 65. I don't know that, So that's one of the reasons why the law changed. But then people were able to use that to find more information on their biological families. And so I did that, and I got my birth certificate back. It took about 8 months.
Really?
And I'd almost kind of given up on hope that it was ever going to arrive. And it was just because they were backlogged. And when I finally got it, I did like most people do. I Googled
your name, yeah.
my name, my birth mother's name actually, and nothing came up, and nothing I thought that was any significance. And so my wife began digging around, which she's a very great detective. I think she maybe missed her calling.
It seems like women are always the best detective.
I know. I think she missed her calling there. And so she began digging around, and she found actually an obituary which she thought was my mother, my birth mother.
Yeah.
And it turned out that was the case. And she had passed away in March of the year when I got my birth certificate. So this is like October, right? Late September, early October. And so in the obituary were listed her two children.
Yeah.
Chris Schaefer and Beth Schaefer. And so then we began to Facebook stalk, right? Like who are these people? Can we find them? We couldn't find my sister, but we found this guy that we thought might be my brother, right?
Yeah.
And so I reached out to him on Facebook Messenger.
But you sounded like a crazy person.
I dropped right into his DMs, right? I'm like, hey, and I even remember I started the message like, hey, this is probably going to sound crazy, but stay with me. And so I said, and I didn't say I'm your brother. I said, I think that we have an important family connection through your mom. I would love to talk to you on the phone about that. And is there a time where I could call you? You can call me. Here's my number. So he messages me back and says, yeah, I'll call you tomorrow. I'm pretty sure I know what this is going to be about. I'm like, and I'm showing my wife the phone, and I'm like, what's this about? What is it? We're parsing the words. Like, what does that mean? And
long night to that phone
and she's
call.
she's like, I don't know, but what is it? What does he know? What do you know? And I'm like, I don't know. And so we're looking at, and it's pretty clear from his Facebook profile and his picture, we're brothers. I mean, we look alike.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just obvious, right? And little did I know that on the same, he was Facebook stalking me, and his wife was going, it's obvious, it's him.
Yeah.
So the next day he calls me, and we're talking, and I said, well, there's no easy way to say this, but I was adopted, and I think that your mom was my mom, and that we might be. I said, I think you're my brother,
Mm-hmm.
and he goes, I know you're my brother.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I'm like, oh. I'm crying. He's crying, and what it turned out was they had known about me,
Mm-hmm.
that my mom had me and given me up for adoption since they were pretty young. He was 12 and my sister was 9 when they found out. And so they had been looking for me,
Mm-hmm.
and to no avail. On their end, they'd kind of hit a brick wall. And so it was kind of like we finally found him. And I was kind of like, I finally found them.
Yeah.
And then we connected. Actually, the first time we saw one another person to person was on Christmas Eve,
Wow.
4 years ago, and got to spend Christmas Eve and Christmas together. And now we talk about every day.
That's so cool.
My
So
sister
cool.
is, the reason we couldn't find her, she's married to a guy from Serbia, and she took his last name, of course, which is Savetkovic. So it was a really weird sort of
Mm-hmm.
we couldn't find her on Facebook, and so she lives in Quincy, Illinois now, and she's a medical doctor in residency.
Oh.
And so we were just up at her house last week, just hanging out.
That's so cool that they're close, though. They're not
close.
states away.
And then my brother lives in Springfield, Missouri. So, we get it's crazy. It's just a crazy story. It's kind of God's grace.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't deserve to meet them and to know them and to be in their life, but God allowed it.
That's so cool.
At the right time,
Mm-hmm.
And
when all three of you were ready.
When we were ready. I don't know that I would have been ready at 22 years old.
Yeah, for sure.
Versus 50, 49, 50 years old. So
you're 33.
Huh?
No, you're 33.
No, I'm only 30. I act 33, but I'm not 33. Right? I'm a grandfather now for the second time.
Yeah. So you're a family man. Tell me about your family a little bit. You have a daughter and a son, right?
I have 4 kids actually.
Oh,
so I've been married for 27 years to my beautiful bride Stephanie, and she is a elementary school teacher by trade, so by degree. And so she teaches right now for VIP Kid, which is a Chinese company.
Yeah.
And so she teaches English to Chinese children in China.
That's very cool.
And does that. And so my oldest daughter, Corey, is married and lives in Quincy. And she got married last October. So hasn't been married quite a full year yet. But then she found out she was pregnant in the middle of November. And so they had our grandson, Wesley. And so he is a couple months old now. And we're excited about him.
Oh, yeah.
He's awesome. And then I've got my oldest son, Chase, is 22. He lives in California. He's a former United States Marine. So he lives out there. And then my next son, Carson, is a sophomore here at HLG.
For sure.
And he's a computer science major, RA on campus, boyfriend to Bailey on the soccer team. And yeah, they're awesome. We love spending time with them. And then my youngest daughter, Claire, is almost 16. And she just started her first job ever this past week, yesterday, in fact, at Tropical Fruit Smoothie.
Oh, there you go.
Here in town. So I'm looking forward to the discount.
So, yeah, family and friends discount.
Family and friends discount. Right? Because they're expensive. They're not cheap.
They're like $5 smoothies.
Right, $5 drinks. So maybe we'll get half off there or something. But and then like I said, we got our two grandsons, Wesley and Gabriel's almost 2. And so big family. We got dogs and cats. And, and love our animals. And we're it's pretty chaotic, but right now only having one at home, it's different, right?
Oh yeah, my mom and dad, we're a family of 5. I mean, of 7, but 5. There's 5 of us kids.
Yeah,
and currently there's only 2 in the household.
Yeah,
and
it's weird.
Mom and dad say it's just weird.
It's weird. Claire's to the point where she plays soccer, and so in the spring, last spring, she was gone to games a lot, practices, and it'd be just me and my wife at home for dinner, and we just kind of sit and look at each other like,
you have nothing to talk about.
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you want to do? What do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? And it's like, you want to go out? Sure. It's like, so it's like, it's just this weird stage of life that you're like, you're
not used to yet.
Yeah, you're just not used to it. And we'll get used to it. It'll be great.
Yeah. And, you got a grandkid you can spoil now, too.
This is true. And he comes over a couple times a week. My daughter will bring him over, and yeah, he's a lot of fun.
Oh, my mom and dad are always like, you better be prepared because your kids are going to be more spoiled than you ever were.
Right. And it's true. And I never understood the phrase, like, and your parents will get this, but they always say you love you have this, like the love for your grandchildren is even multiplied. Like you have more joy over your grandchildren. And I always thought, well, that's weird. Like, how could that be? But it really hit me when my newest grandson was born, and of course you have love. He's your grandson, but seeing like my daughter transform into a mom was like, and just seeing what a wonderful mom she is, and how much she loves her son, and the love, like how she looks at him, right, is like. It's just brings this increased joy.
Just pride.
Yeah, you're like, I know what that feels like, and she's getting to experience it. And that's awesome.
Yeah, it brings up a whole new level of conversation, and then
it really does. And yeah, it's just special.
Oh yeah,
and we love it. Yeah, he's gonna be very spoiled.
Okay, so I got one more question for you, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
So we've been spending a lot of time in the past and present and what's going on in life and stuff like that, getting a deeper look at you. But I also want to ask, what future-wise, what are you looking for here at HLG? What's the future hold? Do you know, or?
I don't know. I just want to serve the institution and serve HLGU and its students and alumni as best as I can in whatever role that might look like. I don't see myself getting too far removed from the classroom and teaching. I love spending time with students. I love seeing the light bulb go off for them. I love teaching, and it's a passion of mine. I do get to do some administrative work with my position as chair of the division. And I get to do things that I'm passionate about. Like I get to be the director of church and denominational relations, which means that I get to spend time with pastors. I get to love on them. I mean, I was a pastor for 13 years. I understand how.
You know how much.
Yeah, like, I mean, your uncle's a pastor, right? It's
My dad's a pastor.
Your dad's a pastor, and so you know, right? You're like, it's not easy.
And it's not just a Sunday job. It's constant.
And so to be able to just sit down with those guys, take them out to lunch, just hang out, encourage them, listen to them, love on them unconditionally. That's what I love to do. And then my passion's also missions, and so I get to do a lot of that here. I've had a lot of freedom to organize and lead teams, as well as be a part of our Israel partnership.
Yeah, you're
also.
the main head guy at the Israel partnership, which brings so many people a new light into what they see.
And I just love the connection that I have with the land of Israel and the people, the relationships I've been able to build. But I really treasure seeing students, the joy that they have for the first time when they see like Jerusalem, or they stand in the Garden of Gethsemane, or they get to see the Garden Tomb, and just there's it's emotional, right? I mean, it's like you can't help but. I would worry if people like weren't emotional, if they were just like, this
is cool.
This is kind of okay. Yeah, next, But to see them stand in those places and connect in a real way with their faith, that's a passion of mine, and I love being a part of that and getting to pour into the students' lives in that way. So, we always say, like the Bible says, if the Lord wills.
Yeah, for sure.
Come now you today or tomorrow, say, we'll go to such and such a city and do this and earn a profit. Well, you don't know what your life is, right? Life is a vapor. And I think if 2020 has taught us anything with COVID, I mean, life is fragile. Life is
ever
a vapor.
changing.
I mean, it could be taken away quickly. And so I'm grateful for what I have right now, and I'm just leaving the future in the Lord's hands.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing.
And whatever He has, I'm content, in a way. I could always do more, but I don't want to ever get too far ahead of what the Lord has for me.
For sure.
I worry when that happens a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Then you get ahead of
then you're
yourself.
like, well, is this me or is it the Lord that's doing it?
I can tell you right now, I'm right there with you. I don't even know what I'm going to do next year, and I'm graduating college. So.
Well, you just sometimes like you take the next step, right? You just it's a step of faith. You don't know all the answers. You don't have all of them. And I like to jokingly tell people, if the Lord had told me at 20 years old, hey, you would be a university professor with a PhD, a pastor, all of that. If you would have told me that at 20, I would have been like, yeah, whatever.
No shot. Yeah.
No. That's never happening. Like, it would have freaked me out,
For sure.
I mean, just to think like, that's so not, it wasn't even on my radar at 20 years old. And so I think, and I wonder, I'm like, I'm only 50, that's not that old. I've got a good 20 more years left in me of
make it 40.
Maybe 30 or 40. I don't know, So if the Lord can do that in 30 years from 20 to 50, what's He going to do from 50 to 80?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there could be something on my radar that like makes me like think about it now and go, no way. But then I get there and I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
It's a possibility.
I can see what the Lord's doing here. And so He shapes us, He forms us, He leads us. And I think it's just up to us to rest in His sovereign hand.
That's amazing. I got one more last question for you. Just for myself. We're running out of time here.
No, it's okay.
I want to know, how did you meet my Uncle John? This is personal for me.
Yeah. So your Uncle John. So I met John and Adrian at Lenexa Baptist Church. They were in our Sunday school class.
Yeah.
So we just randomly, so it was weird. So we randomly joined this Sunday school class where we were like 10 years older than everybody. Yeah. We didn't know. I mean, we were new to the church, and if you know anything about Lenexa Baptist, it's a little overwhelming.
Yes.
2,500 people.
It's like massive.
It's like a small city, and you're wandering around going, where do I fit in, and what Sunday school class should I go to? And we saw these people walking into a Sunday school class, and we're like, we'll try that.
Yeah.
And so we got to know them through the Sunday school class at Lenexa Baptist and got connected with them there. And there are some just incredible people in that class that even now, still today, that we look back on and we go, we just treasure those people. They're just wonderful. So I think a lot about your your aunt and uncle. They're awesome.
They're amazing people. They're traveling
Yeah,
all
I
over
heard
the
that.
country
Yeah,
in a camper.
Yeah.
Homeschooling their kids. I think it's amazing what they're doing.
That's
they're
awesome.
in North Dakota right now.
North Dakota.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're hitting all the Midwest, and then they're hitting the East Coast, and then they're traveling all the way over the West Coast, and
wow.
they're planning to hit all 50 states. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to see. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Turner. It's been great.
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me, and enjoyed our time together so much.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to A Closer Look. I hope you enjoyed our closer look at Dr. Turner's life. Please like, subscribe, do whatever you can to help support this. It's one of my passions. I'm really enjoying this, and I hope to produce many more after this. Thank you for your support.